Hello, church. Bob Myers here as we continue our study through the book of Psalms, and pray that you're staying cool these days and properly hydrated as we go through this warm spell on the weather-wise. As Brother Bob mentioned yesterday, we're moving into Book 2 of the book of Psalms. Theologians have basically divided Psalm into 5 books. We've completed the first one. We're starting in the second one. And some of the distinctives between 1 and 2, in Book 1 of Psalms, David was credited with 37 of the 41 Psalms that we went through. In Book 2, which will go from Psalm 42 to 72, of those 31 Psalms, David is only directly credited with 18, so about half. So we're seeing several Psalms that are written or credited to someone else as we go through that. This is one of them. The author is not specifically stated. At the heading, it says, "To the chief musician, Maskil," which is, again, we talked about this. It's kind of a learning, a training, a instruction for the sons of Korah. And Korah was a descendant of Levi who usurped his authority as a priest, and he challenged Moses. There were 3 of them that challenged Moses. Korah was one of them. And they said, what gives you the right to say what God says, because we're all in this together, and you're just kind of making out as a one-man ruler here. And they had a little challenge in the desert, and the earth opened and swallowed Korah and the others, and swallowed them, their families, all their possessions, and then closed back up. And that was pretty much the end of that uprising. But his children, he had some sons that survived, were not killed in that event, and they went on to become worship leaders. In fact, when Jehoshaphat went out against the enemy, the sons of Korah were the ones leading the song service that led the army when Jehoshaphat went out, and they didn't have to do a thing, but God gave them victory as they praised the Lord. So that's who this is to. And someone has said this is a song is a prayer of a discouraged saint. And I believe that's probably a pretty good definition. There's a lot of discouragement here, but a lot of encouragement as well. And David does something here. I think David wrote this psalm, actually, and wrote it down, and then he gave it to the hymn leaders, the worship leaders, to develop into a song and lead worship with it. But one of the things he does here very well, he encourages himself in the Lord. We read in 1 Samuel 23:16 that Jonathan went to David when he was hiding from Saul in the woods, and Jonathan went to him and strengthened his hand in God. And Jonathan gets taken out of the picture not long after that, and David has to do that himself. He strengthens himself in God, and he asks himself questions. He preaches to himself. He challenges himself. He said in 5, "Why art thou cast down, O my soul?" I mean, he's talking to himself. He said, why are you cast down? God has been faithful. God has delivered. God is well able. God's going to take care of things. It's going to be okay. And he encourages himself. He preaches to himself. He preaches himself out of a despondency, a discouragement. This may well have been written when Absalom come in and usurped his authority and had an uprising and took the throne, and David left Jerusalem, was driven out, because this person writing this psalm is away from the house of God. He says, my soul thirsts for God, for the living God. And he says, I have a thirst for God. And God said of David that David was a man after his own heart. And this is portrayed in this psalm. Even though he's discouraged, even though he's despondent, even though he's away from the temple of God, he has encouraged himself to trust God and follow God. Man, we all get in a dark place. We all get in a low place. But let's encourage ourselves, talk to ourselves, preach to ourselves to trust God. Be blessed today, Psalm 42.